Bradley, did you wipe the tears from your eyes just in time to
Oh,
start the session?
I so wanted to see the who wins the MVP and the trophy, but I've had to turn the TV off, and I'll have to go back to it in a few minutes. Yeah.
That's awesome. What a year.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, I kept saying if they don't win this year, I don't know how they could ever win. There's just been such a great team. And
Yeah.
I was telling a diehard Yankee fan 3-4 weeks ago, the Dodgers are going to win not only this one, but they're going to win at least 3 over the next 7 years because they've got that much talent.
Yeah.
But, it's only the 7th championship in 140 years. Not like it happens all the time.
No. Well, and having 2 of your teams in the 1 year within a couple of weeks of each other, that's amazing.
And the Dodgers number 7 and the Lakers 17. Those 7 guys, so big year for both.
That's so good. That's awesome. Well done.
Thank you. I just have to get back to where we're supposed to start. So exciting. Might just. Hey, what's up? Cats have both just woken up. I'm sure I woke them up. Hey, Frida. Hey, y'all. All right, well, folks, we might make a start. I'm very pumped, so you have to stay pumped with me a little bit. Everyone's got their phones on, and a few minutes ago, my Dodgers just won the World Series. 7th time in like 140-year history. Big event. I just want to tell you about this hat for a minute. This is an official, real Dodger baseball hat. My daughter lives in LA at the moment. She's actually just sold her house last week and is going to leave LA. But she said a friend of mine, her dad works for the Dodgers, and she's invited me to a game. And she gets to the game, and it's early morning here, 7:30 at night there. She sends me a text and says, "We're in a box. We're in a corporate box." She just thought she was just going to get seats, and I said, "Oh, that's great." And then a little while later, she texted me again and said, "Oh, we were all just given official Dodger hats by her dad." And it turns out her dad is the president of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and we're in his personal box. So this has been touched by the president of the Los Angeles Dodgers, this hat. I'm a big fan. Love my sports, but and they're my big team, Dodgers and Lakers. Anyway, and on a sad note, today I'm a massive Bomber supporter, and Bruce Reed, our longstanding doctor of 40 years, and one of Rob Fletcher's best friends, and my doctor, personal doctor, passed away this morning after suffering a asbestosis, cancer-related disease. Very sad for his family. All right, what I wanted to start with is I asked you guys last week to think about things that you can do on Monday, things that you can do to implement this, to make this more real for you, to make it stick. And I'm just wondering if any of you want to share any things that you have done or you're thinking of doing or you think you should do to actually help make this stick. Examples where you've used it, whatever, just be brief. But anyone like to offer anything before we continue on with Maxwell?
For myself, Bradley, it's being more mindful, the rewards for doing the actions, so to speak, and knowing what the actions are and what you need to do to get there. So having the destination in mind, what are the steps to get there and what are the rewards along the way? So whether it's a 10, a 25, a 50, just being more mindful of what's going around and what the destination is about and the why.
Yeah, you know, a little bit of begin with the end in mind, isn't it? You know, why are we doing this?
Correct.
Good. Anyone else? Everyone else is just doing what they've always done and just spending time every Monday.
I'll go.
All
I'll
right.
go.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can't see you.
Well, I don't have to go, but I thought I'd go.
There you go.
You can't see me. Oh, anyway, you're talking about the whole course, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've obviously done it before, but one of the biggest things, one of the things that stands out to me is the Covey concept of win-win. I think sometimes, you know, you may think that, you know, for you to win, someone has to lose. But I really like that concept of win-win, you know, to know that, you know, an outcome, you know, can be something where, you know, two people walk away, they're both happy, they both feel like they've got something. It doesn't mean, you know, for you to feel satisfied that you have to sort of, you know, screw someone over or something like that, you know, whether it's a supplier or whatever, you know. And I think that's just a really positive way to, you know, do business or to conduct yourself generally because, you know, it's positive, it's winning for both parties.
Yeah, no, that's right. You're absolutely right in what you're saying. And I think that we don't always think that, you know, we probably don't always focus that it is an opportunity to be win-win, that when you get a win-win, you end up in a better outcome for everybody and it leads to the next one as well and the next one. So no, it's very positive. It's funny, I've been listening to the history of British history and I'm like 170 hours into it. It's pretty amazing. And I'm in the year 1025 and there was the King of England. They're all Vikings at this point. He's Viking and he was playing his brother-in-law in chess who he didn't like and who had done several things to him bad. But during this chess match, his brother-in-law was winning. and the king didn't like it, and he sort of knocked the pieces, and the brother-in-law got up and left the table, and he was, because the brother-in-law was actually stirring the king that he was beating him, and that night, actually the next morning, the king had him killed. And that was a win-lose. So, he'd done all these other things, but stirring him about losing in chess, win-lose. Anyone else like to share anything in their journey since we've started the course?
Yeah, Bradley, it's Mike. I've just found myself increasingly in the last couple of weeks just analysing people and I guess looking at their disc profiles, and then even in preparation for meetings and things with various people, trying to prepare, I guess, a little bit more in tune with what I think their profile is. So I think that's been a really interesting experience too.
Yeah, and the thing about disc is the more you sort of work on it, the better you get at it. And the more you recognize, same as body language, the more you study it, the more you see it in other people and in yourself, and you think, oh no, I don't want to sit like that, or I don't want to do this because I'm potentially giving off the wrong message. I mean, sitting in a listing appointment and being able to reflect positive messages back from your body language to the other people is really important. Tim Heavyside's, little head nods that he loves, and and he's always asking people for confirmation. He's giving them a little head nod, and that's all body language stuff, and that's all NLP related sort of stuff. Wait till you start seeing a lot more people in person and you look at their feet.
I was just going to say that, Bradley, I can't wait to see people's feet. And it's not a fetish, it's just weird now.
I know, it is, but you look at, I mostly notice my feet more so than others. When I'm talking to people, I realize my feet aren't pointing towards these people. I don't want to be talking to them anymore, So yeah, watch your own feet. Anyone else like to share anything about their journey since we started the course before we move on?
Bradley, I'll share. One of the takeaways is, apart from things like the disc and the feet and looking a bit more at body language and so on, the goals for me, making me focus much more on the goals and the win-win. I'm finding that important, but also you've given me a lot of reading to do. So I'm not there yet.
Yeah, that's a good thing too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Good to read and learn. All right. Anyone else? Okay. We started on Maxwell last week, and we're going to continue. Law of navigation, which is the fourth law, is anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Because you'd look at this and you'd say, well, if you're steering a ship, you're probably the manager, and if you're charting the course of where you're going, you're probably the leader. And it's about that future. Sarah and I have a meeting with Caroline on Friday morning to talk about what do we do about going back to the offices, and how are we going to deal with the changing of legislation again. And we're trying to stay ahead. I spent the day with Harley. We're talking about JobKeeper and what we're going to do as far as people's packages and all of those sort of things, and just looking ahead, trying to keep going with what's going on. We've been looking at all the softwares we've been using, to make sure as we come out of this, we're doing it right. And Sarah's looking at Inspect Real Estate again to see if how it's all functioning, and whether we could actually encourage people to use that more, and lots of things. You got to stay focused through it all. And I think I said this earlier on, that one of the partners said to me in my law firm days, that I stayed focused on the objective for 6 years, no matter what they threw at me. And it's easy to get distracted. It's easier to get off course. It's harder to stay the course, and particularly when you have a lot of people who have different views. And we have 8 or 9 F&P directors, and we have 28 directors in the whole group of Fletchers. And I can tell you can't have a conversation with 8 or 9 people and get the same answer. It takes drive to get everybody ultimately going that way. I don't care what it is. As simple as saying, do you want gloss or matte? You're going to get 5 saying they want gloss. You're going to get 4 saying you want matte. And if you ask again in 2 months, you'll get 4 saying gloss and 5 saying matte. It's just always the way. And, you know, I think about the same thing, you know, even watching, you know, baseball, and they just now, and they, you know, they put on a batter's 1 for 2 and they pinch hit for someone who's batting 1 out of 10 so far. And you think, well, why would they do that? You know, like, people like change, they like difference, they have difference of opinions all the time. And all of that means that it's very difficult to often stay focused. You know, I really struggle at times with all the directors, and they always have different opinions, they all have different views, and you know, it's very difficult to get them all on the same page. And we ultimately have to agree on a corporate view, which is whatever we've ultimately agreed, or I've said, look, there's a lot of different views, this is what I think we need to do, and they all say, all right, that's our view, you know, all right, we got to agree to that and walk out. But that doesn't mean in their heart everybody really accepts that, because we all come from different places. So I think this is one of the really harder things to do, is stay focused. And because of everybody having so many different opinions about everything, we are trying to make sure we broaden people's views of things. When I have conversation with directors and team leaders, and I've had this conversation with, you know, people, you know, like Sarah and Nelson and others many, many times, that you don't see the whole picture. You know, you're not aware of everything going on. So it looks in isolation like that might not be the right thing, or we're focusing on the wrong thing. But if you understood all the pieces, then you might think differently. And that's what I have to often say to the directors. You know, you're only seeing this much of this much, and you think you've got the view on it, but there's so many other pieces. And really, it's not easy to keep in touch with all the pieces either. And that's one of the things you really have to do when you're in charge, or you're running your practice, or you're running a whole lot of finance, whatever your role is. You got to try to see all of it. And the more in context you can be with the whole of the organization, then the better your navigation is going to be ultimately. And you know, I regularly, I did it yesterday, I regularly call my counterparts in other firms. I've got 3 or 4 CEOs of some big brands like ours that I have a lot of time for. We respect each other, we call each other and ask questions, say, have you faced this before? Or, you know, what do you think about this? And you know, and it helps, because you got to seek views from all over the place, and sometimes it helps people who have been there or done that before. It sometimes helps to share those views with people, particularly you're trying to influence, let them try to understand more of it. Sometimes you have to bring people into your confidence to understand more of the picture, so they can be on side. That's all part of this whole process of trying to navigate people through all of these things. If they are, you know, if you're in a position where people follow, then you are leader, either implied or expressed. If they're not following, then, you know, maybe you're not. So, you know, you got to think about that. You know, those who fail to heed the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them over and over. This is very true. You know, I said it to you guys earlier that, you know, I've done this for so long, and these people issues, that there's very few times that things don't, I can't sort of foresee that, well, you can have 5 different things happen here. And that might be what happens in the future, or, you know, just the experience, the gray hair, the wisdom, is why people ask you your opinion. And, you know, we do learn from what's happened before. We have to try to apply that into the future. I'm just like everyone else who says, well, we tried that before and it didn't work. You know, you got to be very mindful of that sort of statement. You know, you've got to be mindful of being open-minded. Things change, people change, situations change. But the past is usually a pretty good guide to a lot of things. And an interesting thing, a lot of people now who have ideas don't realize that that's not a new idea. You know, that's been tried and thrown out 12 times before. Or in fact, my brother sends me this joke of the week or joke of the day, sends him sometimes. And he sent me a joke yesterday, just email, you know, joke. And it was a really bad punchline from a very, very good joke that's been recirculated and trashed. And I wrote back to him the real punchline, and he wrote back and said, yeah, that's a much better punchline. you know, a lot of things happen in the past that are repeated, keep getting repeated. And when you've seen those past, you can understand, all right, how do we best apply it now? How do we best get the right outcome now? So one of the big issues of this whole leadership thing, and that is about walking the talk. We need to update this word here. Oops. Okay, do you have to save this, Sarah, or it just automatically saves?
It automatically saves.
Oops, sorry guys. What should people do to walk the talk? And we all understand the term walking the talk. You know, if we say we're committed to people, we say we believe in people, do we actually do that? What do good leaders that you work with do to show that they are walking the talk? It's important.
I'll go, Bradley. So people that walk the talk, so if they tell you that they're going to deliver something, they give you a clear roadmap, and then from there they execute it. And it normally, as long as you've got good vision to see exactly what their vision is, then they're actually walking the talk on what they say that they're going to deliver.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of that in property management. If you say you're going to deliver something, you need to deliver it, because it can be very cutthroat.
Good. Yep. Very good. Sandy, what else? Who else? Ian?
Communication, Bradley, is a major thing, because you're giving the path to everyone and you're communicating through what's going on. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. So everyone knows exactly what's happening. I think that brings security to a team.
Yeah, you use the word why, and why is one of the least used words in the workforce, and why is one of the most important words. You know, why are we doing it? You know, why are you asking people to do things? Why are we making this decision? Why are we moving in this direction? Why do you need to change what you're doing? Why, you know, and I think when people understand the why, the how and the what is a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, and I often think that again, people who are in power positions, ego positions, they don't want to share the why, because that's their inner secret. And I think that's a mistake. Anyone else comments about walking the talk?
I think it's Sue, Bradley, lead by example. So you can't be sort of like saying to people, I do this, do that, you know, expect this. I'm a big believer in, you know, to walk the talk, you know, you just don't say the words, you've got to do the actions. Because actions
Exactly.
speak louder than words.
Well, that's what, you know, we talked about in leading change in the first module, is that it's ultimately it's what you do, not what you say, that really matters. So if you're saying things and you're doing it, it's really powerful. You know, you're giving people this is where we're heading, this is what we're doing, and then you do it. And walking the talk really is living up to the values and behaviors you talk about and you want people to do. And I use really simple you know, examples of it all the time, like, you know, parking in the visitor's car park. I don't do it because I tell everyone not to do it. So I can't do it. And so many times I drive in and there's somebody in my spot, and I just want to park in it, but I don't, because I know that, well, someone's going to see it. And, you know, I believe we should help each other and be nice to each other. And I'm always trying to do that, you know, to walk the talk. And I think it's really important that leaders do that. I think that's a similar sort of question. We got to update this task D, Sarah. We've just, it's actually, I might just do it right now. I'll just fix it. I don't think we need these two parts. All right. Save. I think you've done an incredible job with these slides, Sarah. People saw the old ones, you know, compared to what you've put together for us. They're fantastic.
And we can share some. They're quite funny.
We don't have to. I don't know if it's my laptop or this presentation, but sometimes I hit the next button about 12 times. E.F. Hutton is a famous investment broking business and obviously person originally, but and there's an ad that was running in America for my whole youth growing up there, and it's probably still on TV now, and that's why Maxwell quoted it. And there's a bunch of people in a restaurant, and then they focus in on people at one table, these business people, a couple of couples, and they're talking, and one of them says, "My broker is E.F. Hutton," and E.F. Hutton says, and the whole restaurant goes quiet, and they all lean in to hear what he's saying, because they're a great brokerage investment company and brokerage house. That's where this law comes from. If you're American, you'd know that because you'd watch American TV. The whole idea is that when the right people are speaking, then the team members are listening, and you should have more of an impact when if I'm in and I'm in the office and Ben Williams takes me aside and tells me something I could do better. You'd hope that has a greater impact than if Connor, no disrespect Connor, but if Connor took you aside and told you the same thing, because you're sort of like, well, Connor and I are kind of similar. Ben's like, this guy is upright in 800,000. He's been around. He's managed all these people. What he's saying should be more powerful. And that's where, that's really coming from. And again, whether it's implied or expressed, who holds the power? Who's making things happen? And sometimes people really laugh at let's look at Melissa and Riley's situation. Riley's a really tough nut, but Melissa runs that office, and I bet people think whatever they want to get done, they better go to Melissa, not necessarily Riley, because Melissa's really the leader when it comes to that sort of stuff. And even though Riley's the director and everything, I bet most people go around him and go to Melissa and say, "Yep, Jacqueline's raising her hand." Because that's.
Do you see me on the phone muted earlier as the chat started?
There you go. Yeah. There's some really famous situations here with leaders in the past saying, "I'm in charge, I'm in charge," and can't remember the famous Secretary of State who started yelling once a bomb hit or something. He started yelling, I'm in charge," to the cabinets. People should know and respect it. I don't know that people, younger generations, to be frank, have the same level of respect towards authority that previous generations might have had. If I look at my own house, my mother was scary and tough as anything, and she would never tell you anything twice. If she told you that your job is to do the rubbish, your job is to do the rubbish. We called it trash, but and she wouldn't tell you twice. If you didn't do it, you get in trouble. And she was like a firm hand. I've said to my kids 175 times, "Could you take out the rubbish?" I don't have the same style as my mother had. She came out of a generation of post-war, post-depression, then World War I, World Depression, World War II, really tough people, and I think a lot of our parents, for example, grew up really, really tough, and they were tougher on us than we are on our generation. And I think the next generation down, the parents who are 40 out there and are 30 and your kids are 10, or you're 40 and your kids are 15 and stuff, I think you guys are particularly a lot softer. And society has made that. You're not allowed to punish people. You can't hit them. You can't do this. You can't do that. Everybody's a winner. I mean, all these things have changed how we are. And I don't think the current generations have the same level of respect naturally for authority as previous generations. So telling people you're in charge isn't going to work. You still have to be able to prove to them that they should listen. I just think it's harder now is all I'm really getting at. I think we're in a different sort of era, and it's more difficult to do it. Riley used to make comments to me. He had someone working in his team who had been rude a few times to me, and Riley was like, I can't believe it, because Riley grew up with a much more strict father, same sort of what I'm talking about, versus someone else who would do that. It would never be in Riley's style to be disrespectful to someone more senior to him. But younger people maybe not feel the same. So as a leader, you're sort of trying to navigate through all of that and the different generations and the different way people are. And I'm sure all of you who are dealing with Gen Ys and millenniums feel frustrated at times because you're not exactly sure how to work with them and how to motivate them and how to discipline them. And it is really different. And they are very different to past generations. And that's been a real challenge for businesses, trying to navigate through how do you manage these newer generations of people. Not easy. Well, ultimately, everyone's ends up retired or fired anyway. But you know, the goal is trying to build the business. You know, we're usually only as good as our sort of latest thing. They just announced I had to leave the Dodger game. They're just at the podium. They just said we have the greatest manager of baseball. Look what he's done. Well, they've won 8 divisions in a row, and they've lost the World Series 2 of the last 3 years before today. So he wasn't the greatest manager yesterday, but today he's the greatest manager because they won. And that's kind of the way it is, isn't it? That, you know, people don't remember too far back. They remember where you are now, where you're going. So you've got to keep being focused, keep getting good results, keep being positive. Remember the emotional bank account. Keep making deposits, not withdrawals, in all the things that you do. You know, this is a really powerful statement. You know, if you don't have a really great team around you, then you look at yourself. And I say to leaders all the time that you have the people around you you deserve to have. And if you have a team of people who don't put in, don't try very hard, then they're not really motivated. They don't really believe in you. And that's what you end up with. And I've worked in organizations when I've started where there was a lot of dead wood, a lot of lack of enthusiasm, a lot of people who just had no get up and go. My quote I said to you guys last week is people with get up and go got up and went. And that's often what happens. And, you know, so if you have good followers, you have people who do the job really well, then you can usually look yourself in the mirror and say you're doing a good job. There's 7 sort of key areas for leader, you know, according to Maxwell: the character of who they are, the relationship, you know, who do they know, what do they bring, what network do they bring. You know, I had to do some stuff with Rob Fletcher this morning at 8 o'clock. We had a meeting. Sorry, no, it started at 9. At 9 o'clock, and I needed some information. And as I said, I spoke to one of my colleagues in the industry yesterday, who's a competitor, runs a rival franchise group, and I had to ask him some questions about certain areas where I'm not familiar, and he was very helpful. And you know, we were farther ahead in this meeting because I had asked those questions, because I knew somebody who could help us. And I think that we often are drawing from outside sources, and you know, good leaders are networked in. They know a lot of people they can ask questions of, and to think we know all the answers, well, we don't. Their knowledge, what they know, what they bring to the equation. What experience do they have? How do they apply that? What industry knowledge? You know, when I said to you guys when I first started that Tim and I did a deal, and I said, I want to draw, Tim was the chairman then, he was sat downstairs where Rob sits now. Rob was upstairs, really basically in sales. And I said to Tim, I want to draw on your industry experience and knowledge, and I want you to draw on my business experience and knowledge, and together we'll be a great team. And we went from being not so good at Fletcher's in 2002 to being very, very successful. And it was a team effort involving Tim, Rob, Marilyn at the time, when she was with us, Tim's wife. And we brought all that knowledge together, industry, my knowledge, and all of a sudden we were really successful. If I wasn't drawing on Tim and Rob's industry knowledge, I would have made a lot of mistakes. I would have tried to repeat things that they've done unsuccessfully. I wouldn't have known so many of the nuances. Likewise, drawing on my business and professional experience, we're able to do things better. We're able to take a good idea from real estate and turn it into something more successful. And that's what good leaders are going to do. They're going to draw that out, not just their own, where they're going to get that knowledge from. You know, if you're not, if I'm Ian, because I see Ian on my picture, and Ian's going in on a listing appointment and he's going to see a 65-year-old woman, I think Ian should take a woman with him. And he'll probably take Michelle, as his, you know, they work together, but you could also take Gail Logan and, you know, and have that connection almost immediately with two people who are of similar, you know, age brackets and all of those sort of things. Not that Gail's that old, but, you know, that idea, sharing that knowledge and going, all right, well, let's get that experience and knowledge in here at that time. Intuition. Good leaders have intuition. What do they feel? How do they think? You know, what sense do they get from this? Sometimes they don't get it right, you know, but often you use intuition. I have to think back to the game today. The pitcher for Tampa Bay was smashing the Dodgers. It was the Dodgers were in the bottom of the fifth. He had struck out 9 or 10 of them. Their top 4 hitters had struck out 7 out of their 8 times at bat. He gave up a single, and the coach took him out. And in that inning, the Dodgers went on to score 2 runs, and they won the game 3-1. And I could never understand, how do you take this guy out? He's absolutely smashing the Dodgers, and he's given up 1 single, and you've taken him out of the game. And that coach was using his intuition. He felt that that was the time to take out this guy. The Dodgers even said it afterwards, and they asked him, they said, well, we can't second guess anyone, but we were so glad he came out. You know, and I don't think intuition is always used correctly, but we have to use it. Experience. You know, we bring that experience to ourselves from, you know, what we've done before. And the more different experiences that you've had in different areas, the more valuable that is. You know, I think someone who's always worked in the same organization or the same industry or the same company doesn't have the same breadth of experiences as someone who's experienced a lot of different things. You know, back and forth watching the game today, I was texting my best mate in LA, Tim, big baseball fan as well. We love the Dodgers, and we were texting the whole game. And Tim's lived in LA. He's worked for 2 companies. He's basically lived in about three places his whole life. And I just think my breadth of experience has been so much more massive in life and business than his. You know, he's worked for 1 company for, well, all but 2 years of his life. It was a family company, and nothing wrong with that. But I've worked for 6 or 7 different companies. I've consulted on dozens and dozens. I have more experience. I've experienced more different things. So leaders draw on all of that, and have to be successful. Obviously, past successes, because you want to repeat those. You know something works. You know you can apply it in maybe a little bit of a variation, but you can apply it, and it'll work again because you've seen it work. You know it works. And ability, basically your overall ability of what you can do. Not anyone is going to be wonderful on 7 of these. The idea, though, is these are some key things to really focus on in yourself and trying to draw out, like, you know, you might be talking to someone in your office who's less experienced than you, and you draw on some of your past experience. Someone's asking you about a situation with a vendor that you're in, and you sort of listen and you go, you know, I've experienced that before, and I think, you know, my intuition telling me about this person, I think this is what you should probably try to do. All of these different traits are what you draw on to do your job. And you might be super strong in 2 or 3 or 4 of these and not so strong in the others. And I think the key is trying to build those up, trying to work on those. If you don't have really good network, build it. I came into real estate, I knew 0. I immediately went out and met with the best firms and the best agents from all over Australasia. I went on a tour of that to bring back all that knowledge and that network. I built relationships with all these leading industry trainers so I could learn heaps from them. And you build what you don't have, and then you become successful. Before we move off this, does anybody have any questions or comments about this whole sort of concept? Okay. Law 6, solid ground. Well, we all talked in Covey, we know about trust, and that trust is the cornerstone of relationships. And if people don't trust the leader, they feel they're Machiavellian, they feel they're uneven, they don't know if you're getting them on a good day or a bad day. You can't tell them things because you can't trust them to do the right things. Then there's no way that person could be an effective leader. And you can't be on what he calls solid ground. And, trust is built through the emotional bank account. The more deposits you make, the more successful that will be. The less withdrawals you make, the stronger it gets. You got to replace those withdrawals with a lot of deposits. And, building trust with people takes time. And it doesn't happen overnight. I just shortcut a lot of it is really just think Covey, because the Covey philosophy on emotional bank account is as powerful a concept you can get on understanding trust. And the whole idea of trust is based on trustworthiness, which is incremental, trustworthy acts. I don't know that I gave this example when we talked about trustworthiness, but think about this, that you want to sell to somebody. So let's say it's to win a new property management or win a new sales listing or whatever it is. Think about this. When they call us and we have a really good conversation on the phone with the receptionist who takes down the information really politely and well, and then passes it to a salesperson who got good information, follows that up with a very good pre-qualifying call, sends out some information ahead of time, calls to confirm the meeting, shows up, really well presented, on time, stands back from the door, does the right thing. Before we've ever really engaged with a client, we've already had about 6 really trustworthy acts where we've done something well and we've started to build trust, that they think, well, this agency and this agent, very good. And, we said we'd do these things, and then we had that really good meeting with them, and then we told them we'd follow them up with some information, and we did, and then we called up and followed up, had you find that information, and reconfirming the appointment. And all these are just these incremental trustworthy acts that's building trust between you and that potential person. And the more of those that you can build, then the more likely they are to trust you. And to think, well, I've done 27 trustworthy acts to get to the point of them saying, yes, I want you as my agent. And there's a lot of trust there. And I think in real life, that trust starts over again. Once you become their agent, ledger gets wiped and you sort of start over again, because they're now seeing you not as a potential, but that you're now my agent, or you're now my property manager, or whatever. But do you understand that concept of trustworthiness is just built through all of those things? So when I'm involved in recruitment, and particularly in days past where I was competing with several other firms that seemed to be the same for talent, I was like, and we still are, like, people apply to Fletcher's for a job. They're going to be communicated with quickly, professionally, just the fact we have their application. If we're not proceeding, they're going to hear that very quickly and effectively. If they are proceeding, they're going to get good communication. They're going to get good follow-up. We're building trust by doing all that stuff. And I think when you're trying to recruit someone, if you can do all these trustworthy acts along the way, before you make them an offer, you have a much, much greater chance of them saying, I accept. And it's the same thing. And they're all just trustworthy, incremental, trustworthy acts. They're just little things that build somebody to go, oh, trust this person. They've done all the right things. They've done everything they say they're going to do. They haven't told me anything that doesn't seem to be right. And I think that's a massive foundation of winning people over and being a good leader. And I think that's a massive part of the 6th habit, or the 6th law. Conflict is something I've sort of built into this as well, because it's a regular thing that we experience in life, in work. And when we talk about this solid ground, if you can't deal with conflict appropriately, then you lose that with people. You lose that trust. And conflict is inevitable. Conflict is part of decision making. It's part of change. If we don't have conflict, we probably don't have growth. If everybody just thinks the same and nobody challenges anything, it gets very stagnant. So how do you deal with it? First, recognize it, that, hey, here's a situation where we're not on the same page. It might still be very amicable, but there is a difference. There is some disparity here in the views, and we need to deal with that. Monitor the climate to determine, is this getting a bit red? Is it a bit hostile, or are we okay? Are we just between the red and the blue? We're okay. We are just trying to manage this. We're a difference of opinion, but everybody's good. That person who's had this situation arise is okay with it. We have to understand it. Often we need to make sure we're seeing both sides of the equation, because, you know, remember, there's two sides to every story. Everybody presents things in their own sort of way. The more we seek first to understand, if we're trying to be understood, the more effective we're going to be in this. And you can get an opinion from talking to one person, and then you go and talk to the other person, and you get a very different situation and a different story. And both of their facts sound, yeah, I could see why you think that. But you two are talking about two different sets of facts. You've interpreted things differently. Often you have to make sure you're talking to both. Like any effective communication, we have to plan our approach to deal with it. How are we going to get a win-win out of this? You know, if you're a salesperson and you're in a situation where a vendor wants $1 million and the buyer wants 900 or wants to pay 950, this is conflict. Is it going to be managed effectively? Are you going to get a good outcome? Are you going to be able to get the deal done, bringing these two parties together without creating red? Not the vendor feeling like somebody's trying to steal their property and the buyer saying, well, we're not going up any higher. Are you trying to take advantage of us? Perfect example, you know, for a salesperson is dealing with conflict and negotiating between these higher and lower positions. People are going to get red. How do we manage that? How do we keep them as blue as possible? You know, everything that doesn't get handled, that's a problem, usually gets worse. I always say deal with the hardest things first, get them out of the way so you can just enjoy the rest, because the longer they sit with you, then the sort of the worse it is. Better off to get it done, clear your in tray, clear your in basket of the hard things, deal with the conflict, because it's only going to get worse by and large. If people are a difference of opinion and it's left to fester, then we all know things build up, the red layers start to build, and it becomes harder to break it down. If you deal with it quickly, you rip the band-aids off quickly, you get it done, you can usually fix it before people have had a whole lot of time to make it a big deal. And I think people make a mountain out of a molehill very happily. So trying to get things resolved as soon as you know they're an issue is usually better than letting it fester. Like everything else, people need to feel that they've had an opportunity to be involved and express themselves and be able to be dealt with fairly, to feel at the end of the day that whatever outcome is done is a fair one. You have to try to navigate through to an outcome that's win-win, you know, and the typical win-win of a conflict is both parties get a little less than they wanted. You know, one doesn't feel like they've been massively taken advantage against the other. If people have differences of opinion and there's a compromise needed, it's probably everybody's getting a little bit less than they ideally wanted, but they can live with it and they're okay with it and they move on. You know, I think that's the inevitable outcome of a situation where you've got two people on different views and planes. They both have to sort of come together to meet. Unless you can really show this one that, hey, your position is incorrect for these reasons, and if you see it this way, you'll probably feel that way. And all of a sudden they go, yeah, you're absolutely right. I misunderstood the facts. And now that I understand the facts, I agree with you 100%. I'm good, all good. And that can happen. So, you know, you've got that outcome, or you've got the outcome where both parties agree to meet in the middle, make some compromises. It might meet in the middle might be this, where one person's come up a bit more than the other, but they ultimately can agree to it. And that's really the goal of trying to deal with conflict in this situation. Before we're going to continue on that. There's some things that that you're supposed to do and not do. As I said, tackle it early. Try to think it through, seek first to understand. Being assertive, by the way, isn't being aggressive, and they're different. I have to tell you a funny little anecdote here that is really pretty funny. We had a litigator in one of my law firms, a woman who'd been with us about 9 or 10 years and wanted to be a partner, but she was a litigator, which usually means they're pretty aggressive, but she was pretty meek and mild. And she had a lot of trouble expressing herself. And she was a bit of a pushover. So we sent her on Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People course. And I felt that that would be a good course for her to build up her self-confidence. And she came back and she wasn't assertive. She was one of the most aggressive people I had ever dealt with. She got right over the spectrum from this meek and mild person to this totally aggressive person. We had to really dial her back to get, like, some sanity in there. Assertive means that you're confident about your position. You're willing to confidently express your position. Aggressiveness is when you're doing it with red and angry and hostile and pushing beyond what somebody's willing to accept. It's like the funnel. So you're assertively putting stuff down the funnel and it's coming back the other end okay. But if it blurps out the top, it's being aggressive. You're putting in too much too fast, too harsh, too fast. That's a pretty good analogy, isn't it? I like the funnel thing. Don't, as yourself or anyone, don't take it personally. I mean, if we can resolve conflict without taking it personally, we're all better off. The people that are players in it and the people who are trying to make it resolve. Coming back to my initial line, I said to you guys at the very beginning of the course, I tell everyone around me not to take it personally, that we're just here to do the best job we can do. Avoid the issue is a problem. It just festers, gets wrong. Fight anger with anger is not really the best way to deal with it. They do teach in customer service that when somebody's being really aggressive on the phone, the best way to get them to calm down is be a little bit less aggressive. But I don't know ultimately if that is the best way. Sometimes you have to do that, a little bit. You have to be, but you have to come in underneath them, not above them. Try to bring them down. The idea of jumping in without understanding is the opposite of seeking first to understand. We said earlier you shouldn't deal with conflict and people's things where they're trying to improve or there's issues they've done wrong in public. It's not positive. People don't want to be embarrassed in front of their colleagues. It doesn't help you. It's a really poor thing for a leader to do it. Should always be doing it in private when there's that situation. And if there's a conflict between team members, it shouldn't be resolved in front of other team members. Take them aside, take them somewhere else away so you can try to resolve it and get it fixed. Okay, before we move on, does anyone have any comments or thoughts about conflict? Okay, I've built into this about an interview, and I don't mean an interview for a job. I mean a discussion with someone, and how you take that concept and make it as successful as possible for yourself. And because often dealing with staff issues or dealing with people who want your assistance involves some sort of meeting, sitting down, talking it through, working through how you do it. So obviously, you prepare, you gather all the facts, you check, what you have to, understand time limits, etc. You're going to plan your structure. Remember I said before that just jumping somebody and saying, I want to talk to you about your performance out of the blue is not a positive way to do it. You need to give people some advance warning. I always said, you call people up. I call people up on the phone and say, look, we need to catch up and have a bit of a chat. They say, what about? And I said, well, I don't really want to have the chat on the phone about what we're going to chat about, but we do need to talk about your performance. If well, how about an hour from now? It gives people a bit of chance to think about it. You might say, look, I want to talk about what's happened between you and X. If you can just give it a bit of thought before we catch up. So the interviewee has some time. It isn't just completely surprised. If you think they're going to take it really badly, then often it's best not to do too much pre-warning, because then they get all worked up and becomes a bigger issue. Maybe it's better to give them a call and say, look, I do need to talk to you about something. It's pretty serious. I just want to flag it with you. If you're okay to talk about it, we will. If not, we'll set up a time for you to come back. Because doing that over the phone isn't going to help. You don't have, if you think they're going to take it badly, you shouldn't do anything over the phone that's going to cause them to, when you've only got a small amount of your abilities working for you. You don't have the body language, the tonality, you don't have the presence to control the situation. It's a bit like, don't talk to your clients on the phone about a price decrease. You should always go and see them to get a price decrease, unless they're saying to you, hey, I think we need to lower our price. Decide the players, best way to do it. Where do we do it? We had an important meeting this morning. Rob and I spoke about it in the afternoon yesterday. We're just talking to some potential franchisees of joining us, and it's advanced discussions. It's exciting. We met yesterday afternoon, Rob and I, on Zoom, and we had a good chat about the structure for today. And it helped me a lot in to be able to bounce it off Rob and talk about it. And then we presented that structure this morning, and we got complete win-win. And it was really helpful to have that meeting yesterday, just preparing in advance and thinking it through and deciding how we're going to do it and the best way to approach it, and all of those things help, other than just winging it, and sometimes you wing it, you don't get the best outcome. Obviously, when you're conducting it, you have to set the stage, why we're here, why the people in the room are here, what's the situation that we want to try to discuss and get over. Obviously, when you present the situation that there's been a conflict between you and ex-staff member going on for a little while, and we're really concerned about it. You okay to discuss that with us? And then they'll say, yeah, look, I'm really glad we are discussing it. Or I'd rather really gather my thoughts. I feel like I'm not really prepared for this. Can I go away and give it some thought and come back in a half hour? Obviously discuss the situation, whatever it happens to be. Obviously summarizing the key points, allowing them to then do the same. And ultimately, sometimes then you have to hear everything and say, all right, well, we're going to give it some thought, and the end of it, we'll come back to you, in an hour or in the next day or two with how we're going to resolve this. You okay with that? Yeah. I find if you do this, you generally get the right outcome. If you properly plan, you set up the thing properly. Sometimes, though, best will in the world, you just strike someone who doesn't want to listen, or just is really hot-headed about it, or storms out, takes it really badly. Sometimes even when they shouldn't. And there's other stuff in it. And often those people will come back and later say, look, I'm sorry, I had other problems and it wasn't really you guys. And, others that come back and say, look, you hit me. I felt sort of blindsided, but in hindsight, probably I shouldn't have been. I appreciate it. I think ultimately, if you properly plan, you get most of them to be win-win, and you get a good outcome. Even if somebody's leaving, even if this is a difficult interview because you're getting rid of somebody that works for you, if you do it right, usually, and I say to most people, you will thank me, not now, but maybe in a few months, that you found a better job that you really like and that you're doing well in. And invariably, that's what has happened. Most people who aren't doing well in their job can't be very comfortable with it. They're in it, but they can't feel very comfortable with it. They just are in it, and they probably every day are stressed over it. And sometimes they get out of it, and then they can feel a lot better. And as we said earlier, follow up. Sometimes that's immediate. You might go right back after 10 minutes and call them on the phone and say, are you okay? Or you might go up and see them. You might ask someone in their department to go and see them and see how they are. Just depends, but you need to follow up, and you need to make sure that you're working to get the best win-win situation that you can, because that's ultimately your goal. Steve Jobs.
One of the keys to Apple is Apple's an incredibly collaborative company. And so, you know how many committees we have at Apple?
No.
0. We have no committees.
No committees.
We are organized like a startup. One person's in charge of iPhone OS software. One person's in charge of Mac hardware. One person's in charge of iPhone hardware engineering. Another person's in charge of worldwide marketing. Another person's in charge of operations. We're organized like a startup. We're the biggest startup on the planet. And we all meet for 3 hours once a week, and we talk about everything we're doing, the whole business. And there's tremendous teamwork at the top of the company, which filters down to tremendous teamwork throughout the company. And teamwork is dependent on trusting the other folks to come through with their part without watching them all the time, but trusting that they're going to come through with their parts. And that's what we do really well. And we're great at figuring out how to divide things up into these great teams that we have and all work on the same thing, touch bases frequently, and bring it all together into a product. We do that really well. And so what I do all day is meet with teams of people and work on ideas and solve problems to make new products, to make new marketing programs, whatever it is.
And are people willing to tell you you're wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, other than snarky journalists. I mean, people that work for you.
Oh, yeah. No, we have wonderful arguments.
And do you win them all? Or?
Oh, no, I wish I did. No, see, you can't. If you want to hire great people and have them stay working for you, you have to let them make a lot of decisions, and you have to be run by ideas, not hierarchy. The best ideas have to win.
So,
otherwise, good people don't stay.
But you must be more than a facilitator who runs meetings. You obviously contribute your own ideas.
I contribute ideas, sure. Well, why would I be there if I didn't?
Incredible person, and participating in creating an incredible company. The law of respect. Stronger doesn't mean one thing. When we look at those characteristics before of a good leader, and we talk about all those things about knowledge, experience, intuition, network, relationships, all of those different things, that's what people are really referring to, is that, you might have leaders that are technically brilliant. They might be incredible people, might be incredibly strong finance side, there's all sorts of reasons why people follow people. They might be a great athlete on a baseball team or a football team, and people follow them because they, appreciate the way they go about doing what they do. All through history, humankind and the animal kingdom follows the stronger. And the stronger is what it is. And it doesn't mean it's, if I'm in sales and I want people to ultimately follow me, if I'm, I aspire to be a director, I got to be really good in sales. I got to write really good numbers. And if I write really good numbers, people are going to respect me that I'm good in sales. One of the issues that, Tim and Rob faced when I first joined Fletcher's is, would the sales team respect me? Because I didn't come from a sales background. And I did have smart ass comments made a couple of times by some of the salespeople that, what do I know? I'm not in sales. And when I would talk to them about how much business I've won in sales and shut them up in a moment when I've, brought in $30-40 million worth of fees in law firms in sales, and I can then build a sales program at Fletcher's within a matter of months that is significantly superior to anything they'd ever seen, they shut up. And, sometimes you lead by example, by results, by runs on the board. But it's a natural thing that for people to respect you, they have to see you in some way that they respect as stronger than them. And people want to respect their leaders and they want to follow them. It's human nature to want to follow people who are going to help you do better. They're going to save you. They're going to find you more food. They're going to help you have a better life, a better day. People want to do that. It's in our nature. You don't have to fight people usually when you're doing a good job helping lead them to a better existence. And, when I first joined Fletcher's, I didn't have to fight too many people. Those that I had to fight are the ones I got rid of because they clearly didn't want to move with the pack. As we were doing better and better things and they didn't want to do it, I made it abundantly clear, I'm not going to fight you, I'm just going to fire you. I don't need you here if you don't want to do what we're doing, because we all need to move together to create the new Fletcher's. And you either, and I'm not just sitting in my room making everything up, we're all talking and agreeing on the course of action. Yeah, I'm leading it, but we're all agreeing. And if you're part of that, you have to come with it. And if you don't want to and you want to fight it, well, piss off. And that's how I was stronger and had gained people's respect, because I was leading them to a better future than the past. And people will follow you to a better future than the past. And people want to do that. And when they respect you, they follow you. And it doesn't it doesn't mean it's a piece of string either. It's not endless, because you can be breaking people's trust. You can lose your way. You can stop doing things that help the business in a positive way. You can, as I said to you, 9 NBA managers were fired at the end of the NBA season this year out of 30 teams, including a couple who got their teams right up there into the final 4 or final 6 teams, or 8 teams. They got fired because they were seen as no longer achieving what they needed to do. I remember, again, a basketball story, but in the 80s when the Lakers had Magic Johnson and they won a championship with this coach, and then coach really wanted to change the way they operated and the focus of the team. And basically the main players of the team, Kareem, Magic, said, we're not following that. Went to the ownership and said, we don't believe in this manager and his approach. And the manager got fired. And that started the run of Pat Riley, who went on to win 3 or 4 championships with the Lakers and everything else. But they didn't respect him. They didn't respect what he wanted to do. They didn't want to follow him. And therefore, they went for someone else, which happens. Knowing what you want and then trying to make it happen is 9/10 of it, but we don't always have all the answers. I certainly don't pretend I do. You know, I ask for people around me all the time to help. You know, I called Rob up yesterday and I had done a whole lot of work on this, and I said, Rob, I'm just not sure how. Can you help me with a few of these things and how we best sort of navigate this? And collectively, we came up with a good plan and executed it today well. And I know what I want. I know what I want to have happen, but we have to have input. We don't do it in a vacuum. You do it with other people. And if you do that, you probably get a better result, because more minds, the better the outcome usually, if you can control it. And you know, when Steve Jobs talks about what he does, and if you see some other videos where, you know, they get all the departments together and they work through, and everybody's got their say on their respective things. The Japanese invented that. What American car companies used to do is the designers would come up with a design. The board would say, we like this design a lot. They'd put it to the engineering team, who would then cost it all out, and then it would go to the production team, who would build it, and then it would go to the marketing team to say, hey, we got this new car, and it's going to start coming off the production line in X amount of days, weeks, months, and we need to market it. And there were a lot of lemons that the public didn't want to buy, and there were a lot of designs that the boards approved, and then then when they costed them out, they weren't cost effective to do. And the Japanese worked with representatives from each of the areas when they changed the whole way manufacturing was done, and basically they had design, engineering, production, marketing, sales all together to work on the concept and ultimately say, what do we think about this as a project before we even start it? Before we spend any money really doing it, can this idea that we've got become a reality? And if it was, and then each step along the way, what they're basically doing is like when we do an off the plan and a builder comes to us and says, I've designed this off the plan, I've got all the permits approved, this is what I want to build, I want you to sell it. And the agent, who's really experienced, like Rob, goes, or Nancy, we can't sell this project. The floor plans are too small, the bedrooms are too small, the cost is way too much, this area won't hold it. A far better project is that the project developers will meet with their real estate agents who they trust at the very beginning and say, look, this is what we're looking at doing. This is the site we have. This is how many places we think we can fit on it. This would be the size of the floor plan. These are the level of the fit outs. What do you think? And if we're working it out, it's going to cost us X. We're going to get, what can we sell them for? And they do it together and they get a better outcome. Does that make sense? Law number 8. The law of intuition. What that's really meaning about leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias is about, can this be successful? You know, Sarah's the only one in my immediate team here who would know. I often say, it might be a good idea, but we can't sell it. The directors aren't going to agree to that, or this is not something that the people want to do. We had a meeting the other day with Sarah and a couple others, and there's some ideas presented. We said, well, you know, it might not be a bad idea, but I don't think that many people are going to want to do it. That's my own view. I don't think it's going to be that popular. And hey, let's go ask. You know, we're thinking, is it going to be successful? You know, if you're a leader of a car company and somebody comes up with a new design, you know, and you think, well, this is pretty good. You're ultimately thinking, can we make a buck off this? Can we manufacture and sell this at a profit? And does this fit in with what we want to do? And you have to think about that. And if not, then you get lack of alignment, you get stuff falling all over the place. Well, I think that goes without saying, is that if you're not leading, what are you doing? You have to be leading. You have to be readers of people. and trust your instincts. We talked about instincts a lot. You have to be readers of people. And, you know, interesting, Steve Jobs was not a people person. He was a design, incredible engineering sort of design mind, not a people person. He needed to have people around him. So again, it's your network, it's everything. It's not just that, but leaders read people, have to understand whether people are on board or not. Am I forcing it through the funnel, or is it just flowing really nicely through the funnel? Is really important part of law of intuition. You know, most things can be learned and developed. Intuition doesn't mean that you've got some just completely innate thing that you can perceive the future. Intuition is looking at the signs and being able to mentally apply your experiences to say, because what I'm seeing and what I've experienced, I think this is what's going on here. You know, if you're a person in a lounge room with a husband and a wife, and you're not looking at their eyes, and when they're making eye contact about different things, you know, then you're really reading it. I remember years ago, one of the houses I renovated, it was a beautiful little cottage Edwardian in Armadale. And in the front yard, it had a really high picket fence and a beautiful cottage garden that was there when we moved in, and we just maintained it. It was beautiful for that house. It was all, you know, very much, you know, roses and, you know, and lavender and all sorts of cottage garden stuff, and had nice little walkways through it. It was really, really nice. And when a young couple bought our house, we agreed that they could come over and I'd show them how to do whatever. And when I was showing them where the hose was for the front yard, and I said, you know, this is how, you know, I water this, you know, when it's whatever, once a week. This doesn't want to be too wet. They made eye contact for a second. And when they left, I said to my now ex-wife, I said, they're going to rip out the garden. She said, did they say that? I said, no, but they're going to rip out the garden. I could tell in the look in their eye. And we went back about 6 or 8 weeks after they bought the house. We'd moved out. My kids were visiting friends on the street. And in that time, they had ripped out the front fence and the whole cottage garden, planted grass, and put in a little driveway. Their house, they do whatever they want. But it was just the eye contact, just my belief in why did they look at each other at that point with that look? And that was, we don't care. We don't care what you're telling us about the garden because it's going. That's this idea that you take body language, you take what people say, you take the way they're looking at other people, and you interpret that with your experiences to figure out what's the next play here. And I think that's what's really important. That's just a follow-on. You have to read the situation. There's a lot of different outcomes, and you have to read it to figure out what is this likely to be. You're aware of what's going on in not just trends in the market, statistically, what's more likely to happen, all of those sort of things. You have to understand your resources for everything that you do. What's available? How much money do you have? How much time do you have to do things? All that affects outcomes. We've talked a lot about being readers of people. And yourself, knowing when you're on your game, when you're not on your game, when you know what you're on about, when you don't know what you're on about, when you need to call in reserves, when you need to call in help. You build the emotional bank account by getting the right outcome, even if you involve other people, other resources, other ways of doing it. You take away from the emotional bank account when you get the wrong outcome. You have the withdrawals. Maxwell's belief is that there are 3 levels of intuition: those who naturally see it, those who are nurtured to see it, and those who will never see it. You know, you never see it if you don't care to see it. if you really don't care about the people around you and what they think, and you just want to do your own thing and do it your own way, then you probably don't have intuition, and you don't try to develop it. If you care, then you will. Obviously, coaching, and there's our John Wooden. Being a coach is a big part of nurturing people and of intuition and getting people where you want to get them. And there's some things that we're talking about here in terms of how people can be effective at coaching people to move forward in whatever that might be. Caring, supportive, patient, good listening skills, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses so you know what you can do to help and what you can't do, and maybe you need to get someone else in to do certain things. I'm not an accountability coach. I say that all the time. I don't want you sending me your stats and all that stuff because I won't even look at it. It's not what I do, whereas there's other people who are really good at that. Know your strengths. Know what they are. Be observant. You know, people tell you things, but do their body language support it? Do their stats and their figures support it? You know, very important. Empathy is not sympathy. Empathy is being able to put yourself in someone else's position to try to understand them better. And having an empathetic approach to people, I think, is critical. It's not about being a softie, but it's about being trying to understand where people come from. Everyone's got, as we've said in this course before, everyone's got bad days. Everyone's got something. Everyone's got difficulties. Everyone's got problems at home. Everyone's going to have an off day. Everyone's going to not feel well at times. Everyone you know will let you down at one time or another because we're just human. If you have people that you believe are truly trying to do the best they can and they've got the character and the competence, then you roll with those. If you don't believe they're doing the best that they can or they don't have the character and competence, then you move them out. It's pretty simple. But if you're going to be an effective coach, you have to have empathy. You have to be able to put yourself in their shoes. If you can't do that, then you will not be successful in that. We've covered a lot of the steps about, you know, conducting an effective coaching session. I'd just be happy to open up to any comments about experiences you've had where it's worked or not worked, or what you do, or, you know, anything about this whole topic of dialogue to try to help somebody get from A to B, which is what all this has been about in the last, you know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Anyone have any comments or thoughts about any of this?
I'll go, Bradley. Probably the one thing that stands out to me the most is that if somebody truly comes to you with a grievance or a problem, I think you need to show empathy as to where they're coming from to truly be able to understand what their situation is and how they've arrived at feeling that way. Then I think you can actually action it better if it's a grievance with somebody else, so to speak. So I think you really have to understand where people come from if they come to you to deal with that conflict. I think that's really important. And be open-minded.
Sorry, I agree 100%. That's, you know, very insightful comment. Others?
Yeah, Bradley, this is Ian here.
Hi, Ian.
Yeah, I agree with what Sandy's saying. I mean, the empathy is really, you know, you're putting yourself in the other person's shoes. So you're trying to see what their concern is and see it from their point of view. So that's the empathy. So that's what Sandy's saying. So I totally agree with that. But then, you know, going back a couple of steps further, you know, we covered dealing with conflict, difficult interviews, we covered laws of respect and intuition. But, you know, if you go back a few steps to dealing with conflict, it's what happens if you don't deal with it. That's a real problem, because I had one person in my office who was a little bit, so let's say a little bit schizophrenic and I don't know if it was a language thing, but he was coming from Eastern Europe and he didn't have very good English skills, and he used to imagine people were saying things about him behind his back. And so this really developed in a negative way in the workplace. And so he used to imagine people saying bad things about him, and particularly women. He didn't like women sort of talking behind him because he'd imagine all sorts of things. And there was one person who he was really hostile with quite a lot. And I sort of let it go. And you really have to, with the conflict, you can't avoid the issue. You have to deal with it, because what happened was it just went on. And for the girl, the poor lady, she felt so threatened. It was almost assault. It was almost a legal definition of assault, because she felt really threatened by it. He was going to do something physical. And what I probably should have done is, you know, moved her to another section or something, because we tried to do things with him. It didn't work. We tried things like giving him an iPod so he'd listen to music so he wouldn't hear people talking behind him. We tried things like that. We tried giving him separate duties, but it didn't work. He was still on at the lady, and I let it go, and it was the wrong thing to do, and I should have probably moved her out of harm's way. But in the end, she couldn't take it anymore. She left the company. So we lost that great staff member, and, you know, we couldn't really do anything about it because I avoided the issue. And, you know, and the other thing is you got to handle sensitive things privately. You can't say things out in the front of other colleagues and embarrass them. So, you know, there's those things are really important. So just wanted to give you that. That's all.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, and I did say in one of our really early sessions that the number one gripe amongst white collar workers in surveying is the management's lack of dealing with difficult people in difficult situations and not dealing with it because it causes conflict for everybody. And, you know, I absolutely believe that you have to deal with it quickly, you know, and if you don't, then it festers and it does affect good people. And you know, and sometimes, despite wanting to and believing you should, sometimes there's circumstances that make it really difficult to actually deal with the conflict. Sometimes there's legal situations. Sometimes it's hard to find the facts. But you know, we should do our best always to try to resolve conflict as quickly as we can. Otherwise, it will cause much more widespread problems.
Yeah, because the other thing that arises from that is if you don't do anything, then others in the office, they see that you don't do anything. So they think, you know, what sort of a leader is this? He's not doing anything. Obviously, there's a problem there. He's not doing anything. So what sort of a leader is he?
Yeah, well, it empowers others to think they can do the same. It's a bit like kids with boundaries and that. Thank you, Ian.
Bradley, it's
just
in regards to the showing the empathy and, you know, starting up like a coaching session. I mean, it's all well and good to show empathy and that to the person, but if you're not actually going to follow that up with actions like, for example, you're all sympathetic and you're understanding of their situation and all the rest of it, and then you put something in place. If you're not going to live up to your side of that bargain or deal or coaching session, and for example, all right, well, let's put X, Y, Z into play and I'll give you a call tomorrow and we'll see how you went with that, and you don't do that, it sort of brings down the whole session, and just that person thinks, well, they don't really have empathy. Do you know what I mean? So again, going back to the leadership thing, you've got to lead by example and practice what you preach and be true to your word. It's just a continuation on right throughout the whole thing, because if someone's finally you know, with a conflict situation that the other gentleman, I think it was Ian, was talking about, and they actually get the courage to come up and open up and discuss it with you, and then you don't back it up with what you say you were going to do, it just that person's not going to come forward again, and ultimately they'll leave. Other staff see you being undermined, so then they undermine. Like, it just is a spiral thing that puts everything out of control, like a chain ball effect type of thing.
Yeah, well, that walk the talk thing, but I'll take your point and I'll make it into a much bigger situation, and that is that whenever you raise expectations and then you don't live up to it, you end up with a lesser outcome. In other words, you said you're going to fix this and then you didn't do what you said you're going to do. You asked people for ideas and then you ignored them. You asked people for advice and you didn't use it or give it back to them. All of those things create a lower ending outcome than before you started. So, for example, in the past, we've had suggestion boxes, which is a trivial sounding thing, but people put suggestions forward because they believe in them. And the rule of dealing with a suggestion box is that you acknowledge every one of them and you let people know whether or not this is something that you will action or you won't action. And if not, why won't you? And if you will, then you have to go back and say, look, I'm not going to do this right now, but in 3 months, we're looking at this and we'll come back to you. And thanks for the idea. But you have to ultimately deal with it. Or you end up in a lower position because next time people won't show the initiative of putting ideas forward. You say you're in a meeting and you're going to do these things, and you don't do it, then people don't believe in you and you get the whole spiraling down. And so you're 100% right too. So there's lots of do's and don'ts about coaching, like we had with the in the other area. You know, you are trying to really get an agreed approach and process, get them to own it and agree that that's how it's going to happen. Try to work through, you know, the learning curve issues and mistakes and all of that, because they're inevitable and that's fine. It's all part of growth. Use all the things you can do to try to get the right outcome and different approaches. Sometimes it might be, let's go across the street and have a coffee. Let's go for a walk. You know, we haven't done this very well. Let's start over. The things we're trying to do aren't working. Would you agree? Yeah, they're not working. Then let's try again. Really important. Some of the don'ts is, this says confuse coaching with assessment. I'm not 100% sure I get all that, but one thing I always say, you know, to people is understand whether you're in a situation where this is just a good information exchange, or am I trying to grow and develop the person? And I think they're two different things. So for an example, if I'm doing an interview with somebody for a job, I'm not trying to provide critique to them to say, you know, you're not presenting very well. What you should do to present better is this. But if I was to hire that person and I got them back in my office, I would say, look, I did hire you, but I want to point out some things that I think you could have done a lot better. And that'll help you when you're involved in your role as a PM or in marketing. And I'll help them then, because then that's that about growth. And so what that point is really trying to make is more about understanding what the objective is in that situation. You want to avoid just jumping in and telling them what the answer is and what they should do. This is what you should do, because you got to get people buying in. You know, all right, we've talked all through this. We've come up with all these things. What do you think you should do now? What are you prepared to do? And get them buying into it to say, well, I feel really comfortable with X strategy. Would you do that? Yeah, I would absolutely do that. All right, well, let's talk about how we make that happen, because I think that's a good outcome. It's far better than, you know, you're just telling them, for sure. You know, you can make an assumption that people understand things and basics and things that they might not understand. And the fact that you've been through 400 coaching sessions, they might have been through one. And, you know, so trying to check the basics, understand, tell me what you think the issue really is. Tell me what you think we're trying to do here. Tell me, when we talk about suggested outcome, what does that mean? What would that mean for you? What would you be doing? And I find often that there's a real disconnect between what you might think is being agreed and what they actually think is being agreed. And it's important to make sure you line it up. I use a very simple example of this. If you ask two people what integrity means, you're bound to get very different definitions. You know, we don't come from the same base all the time. We don't come from the same families, the same learning experiences, the same anything. So, you know, when we make assumptions about what people understand, they're probably wrong. And sometimes you think, yeah, we've got a great agreement. This person's going to go away and do X, and they don't see that at all. So it is very important to be very explicit. Ask them to, all right, so if you were to actually be very successful in this aspect of being a sales secretary, what do you think you're doing? You know, if you're a really successful receptionist for us, what are you actually doing? You know, can you explain that to me? If you actually went and did this exercise, what would you be doing? And that way you can agree, yeah, that's great. Got it. That's exactly what I was wanting you to do and hope to do. And I don't think we spend enough time doing that. I want to repeat something I said to you guys in communications, that we like the sound of our own voice. And the more we speak, the more we think it went well. And the more we tell the person we're in there with what they should do and how they should do it, we think it went really well. And that person walks out with maybe a completely different view of that or understanding of that. They feel like they were just bombarded with. And sometimes people, like, I'll have a session with somebody and I might have someone in the room. I'll always, if it's going to be a counseling session of any kind, I've got somebody else in the room, and I will have that person later recount a different story. And that's their interpretation of how they've taken it in. And I can often say with the other person that that's not at all what we said to you or how it was said to you. And if that's how you've taken it or interpreted it, then that's your doing, but that's not how it was delivered. And so it's important to make sure on a positive or negative sort of thing that you're on the same page as much as possible by getting them to paraphrase what's been said, to recount what they're going to do, what's their understanding of this. All right, what are you going to go away and do, and by when? All those things really help.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright, blessed days, dark, sacred nights. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colours of a rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Quite simply wonderful.
Sometimes we have to just take a moment to smell the roses. Time is it? We've got time. Law of magnetism. We can understand what that is who you are is who you attract. And remember what what we said, is that you're only as good as all those around you, and if you can't attract good people to work for you, then your job is really, really difficult. And it is really important to focus on that. And we tend to attract people not necessarily the same as us, but maybe the same ambitions and work ethics as us, because that's what we sort of look for. And obviously, you look for talent and skills with different attributes for the jobs they're doing. But Fletcher's works best if everyone has a very similar level of conscientiousness and drive towards achieving the right outcome. It's an interesting thing, and this is a conversation that is had with directors mostly, and for you guys to sort of understand this, is that you often get directors in offices, not Fletcher's specific. I mean, all the people I ever consult to, and all these directors who are principals saying that my salespeople just aren't as committed as I am or I was. And I say to them all the time, well, you rose up to own this business, or you started this business and developed it. You're a unique person. They're not the same as you. They might not have the same ambition as you. But it doesn't mean you can't build a good team of people who share very common things like you, like service ethic and conscientiousness and desire to grow and have a sustainable level of income they're happy with. But don't expect everyone to have the same, drive as you and want to work 70 or 80 hours a week, because everyone's different. You have chosen that lifestyle for yourself, and that's why you have what you have. They won't maybe have the same economic success that you had, but that doesn't mean that you can't succeed. And think about, if you want everyone to be like you can't have a whole team of people owning the business. They're all going to get up and go and start rival businesses to yours and be competitors. Having people say, I want to get a full license, to me is never necessarily a positive thing. Because why does somebody want to get their full real estate license? Well, there might be 5 reasons. One might be they just want to get better at real estate. 2, they might think that they would like to ultimately be a director at Fletcher's. Good, but maybe they think it makes them more marketable and they might want to go and open up their own agency. Or, so, we got to look at all those things. But you can't have everybody being exactly the same, but you could have people having very similar behavioral and values to achieve, what the organization wants. I don't work with people well who don't take their job seriously and try to do a really conscientious job of it. I don't think everybody has the same level of intellect, the same drive, the same ambition. They don't. Not everybody wants to be a department head or wants to run a business. Not everybody wants to, take on more and more and more challenges, but the people you have, you want to do their job really well. You want them to be very conscientious about providing excellence in service to whether it's our internal or external clients, be conscientious about getting the job done right, care about what happens when nobody's looking. Those are the things that really matter. And if you get those in your team and you can get enough of those and they have the right skill sets to do their respective things, then you have a thriving team, thriving office, thriving business. And that's what you're really trying to do. And you attract basically who you are. And every owner I've ever gone to and looked at, the people around them were like them. And they either had a really intellectual office. Everybody was kind of intellectual. You have a real mess because the people running it are in a mess and they're fighting all the time and they're not agreeing. You got directors or partners in firms I've been in that don't get along, and therefore there's a lot of conflict in the firm. It attracts people who like that. People who don't like that leave. So the leadership inner circle determines a great deal about the team itself. And if you look at, Melissa running running the Outer Eastern offices and how she does that, or Julie and her team out in Eltham and that area, how they are. Look at Sarah and her marketing team. She attracts people who share her desire to do a great job and to be very conscientious. That's what we obviously try to do. And we ultimately get what we deserve. If we don't put in time and effort into people, if we don't care about the people that we really have, if we just want to hire the next person off the boat, then that's what we get. And if we don't care about their outcomes, we don't monitor what they do, we let them get away with doing the wrong things, we let them get away with abusing other people, we let them get away with mistakes, then that's what we get. That's what you get. Because you deserve to get whatever you do. What gets measured gets done. If you don't care about people, you don't focus on it, you don't look at it, then you get crappy people, get crappy outcomes. And we've all seen it, right? We've all had it happen. And, you know, I think we all believe in Fletcher's that that's not what we're about. And I think, you know, that we create the culture we want to create by having the right values and behaviors. And we shape that culture with our attitudes and infrastructure, and we end up with a team of people who know what they do. And they're a Fletcher's person, for example, in our case. And a Fletcher's person is conscientious about their job. They want to provide a high level of service. They're good at their job, whatever it happens to be. They're good at the technical side of their job. Those are competencies that we all share, whether we're in marketing and finance and sales and PM, whatever it might be. Because ultimately, everyone's a reflection of the leaders. That's the way it works, because the leaders set the tone. And if they don't, then there's no reflection. That means everybody's off doing their own thing, and it's a mess. And people come and go all the time, and there's no real culture or synergy. It's just a mess. And so, you know, as I always say to everyone I ever consult to, take a look in the mirror, because everything around you is because of that person in the mirror. You've created it by the people that you employ and allow to be in your business. And if you don't like it, you're to blame. If you like it, give yourself a pat on the back. We talk about this idea of who we attract, and you know, I've never believed in having a homogenous environment. I like to have younger, older, male, female, ethnic diversity, because you get different things from everybody and you learn from all of it. But what you have to all share is ultimately common values and common behaviors. And that's what you have to work on. And if people all have different values about what they believe and do, and they behave in a random way compared to others, then it doesn't work. And so, you know, when you look at this sort of thing, you know, you're looking at where is our common ground in our attitudes and our background, values, life experiences, what works, what doesn't work for us. People's ability to also be leaders. I mean, I value that massively, of having people who can lead their world in our bigger world, whatever that is. That's Caroline running customer service, it's Beth running communications, it's Nelson running technology, it's Harley running finance, it's, you know, Melissa running an office network. You value that leadership ability, because the more leaders you have, the more effective you are. And I might have said this, if I haven't, and I don't think I said it in this course yet, there are two distinguishing traits of outstanding organizations that's been done through all these studies, two that stand out amongst all the rest. One is leadership quotient, which is the percentage of leadership ability within the organization. And the higher that quotient is, the more successful that organization will be, because more and more people can lead their little fiefdoms that exist within the overall organization. Nelson runs his own race. He leads technology. He comes to me annually with our plan, where we're heading, what we're doing, but he leads it, he does it. I don't have to deal with it. I've got somebody competent and capable, and I have to, over the generations, because it's been generations with Nelson, he's been with us 15, 16 years. I've had to push him to get to the next step several times. That's my job as a leader. but he runs that fiefdom. And what I mean by that is there's times where I've had to say that if you can't evolve and handle our growth, then you can't do this job. So how are you going to cope with more people and more offices? What technology do you need to do that job? You got to keep growing as we grow. And he has. You know, we have still one technology person. We had one person when we had 3 offices. We have one person and we have 23 offices. You know, we had one person, we had 40 people. We now have 160 in F&P and we have one person. He's grown and developed. I've helped him, but he runs his fiefdom. That's what you need, people who do that. The second is communication. The more effective the communication is in the organization, then the more synergy that's created and the more you leverage off each other. And those are the 2 things. So when we talk about leadership, it's just critical for an organization to have a tremendous amount of leadership. And that's why I run this program every 2 years to teach as many people as possible in Fletcher's how to manage and work with other people, how to lead people, and how to grow and develop the people around them. And the more we do that, then the more successful we are as a company in an office. And the more our directors in each office effectively lead those offices, the better they grow and develop. And that, you know, should make sense to everyone. Law of connection, number 10. You know, the whole idea of empowerment is getting the heart and the mind engaged to work with the hands. And you have to get the heart really going for people to want to give you their hand and to do the job. Because you can either get somebody doing 65% of themselves every day, or 25% of themselves every day, or 85 to 100% of themselves every day. And that is entirely based around what they believe in the people that are leading them. If they like and respect the people that are leading them, then they give more and more of themselves every day. If they don't, they give less and less of themselves every day. And those who have get up and go, get up and go. Those who don't have get up and go end up being the 25 to 45% of themselves every day. They give the organization, they go home bored, they speak badly of it behind their back, and they just put up with it because that's what they do. And a lot of people don't want to make a change, they just live with it. And I've come into a few organizations, and Fletcher's in 2002 was like that. You know, everybody who had in sales who had get up and go had got up and left. It was a really down culture. It had been way past its prime, and we revigorated it very, very quickly and very smartly by getting people more engaged, getting people that would join Fletcher's who were more engaged, getting a support team who actually cared. And if you can get that going, you get more and more of the hand. Think about yourself. When you've been in jobs where you're not giving 100%, you're giving 60%, 50%, 40%, think back why. And when you're in jobs where you're giving that 80, 90, 100% every day, think why. And I guarantee you'll feel that you had a connection with those people that were supervising you, either at the next level or above you, or you had a real relationship feeling with the owner, that they really cared and you really wanted to do the best job by them. Because that's the reality of how that works. The more connection you have, the more effective you can in tapping into the people around you. And the whole idea of giving before you get, you know, investing in people, making an effort with people, showing them that you care, helping them to get better, understanding how you can help them to grow and develop, will help you get the most out of those people, because they will then feel like, wow, this person is really putting in for me, really helping me get to where I haven't been before, and I want to give back. Said the heart comes first. I like this sort of idea as you connect with one person at a time, that the ripples in the water, if you can affect your inner circle and get them really motivated, and they can work on their next circle and their next circle. You know, think about if we get a salesperson, whoever, Jane, to be better relationship person with her clients and service her clients better. Jane will then through the year deal with 75 vendors, 150 if you count husband and wives. She'll deal with, you know, 1,000 buyers. Jane has now affected basically whatever it is, 1,200 people in the marketplace with how great Fletcher's are service-wise. And we've affected one person, Jane. She's then gone out and influenced 1,200 people to think Fletchers are great. So our job is to influence people around us, to get them to be showing the behaviors and the values that we really need for them to be able to go out and do that themselves. And the more that you can get that going, then the more successful you are. And this all comes from that connection of people feeling a belief in what you're doing. You're never going to really give a lot for leaders who don't care. If you feel like you're just a tool, then ultimately you have your own pride and you have your own standards, but eventually that wears thin and your numbers start to go down until you leave. You just say, oh, I don't want to be in this environment anymore, and you move on. You have to, and the connection doesn't have to be with Bradley Brown or with an owner. It doesn't have to be with Riley Waterfield. It might be with Melissa. It might be with Sarah. I don't have a direct connection with the marketing girls in Sarah's team. While I talk to them regularly and say, hello, Sarah's the one who supervises them all day. And if they're going to come or go, it's most likely because of Sarah. They really like working with her. She's been great. She's helpful. She's caring. And as a result, they stay. Obviously, I get affected by be running Fletchers into the ground or being really rude to them whenever I come around, stuff like that. But overall, we have a connection with that sort of next tier of leader. Who's influencing me the most, and do they care? And if they do care, then I'm going to care. If they don't care, then I probably won't care. If they can't have any empathy for me, I'm not probably going to have any empathy for them. And I think ultimately that's what happens. And this law of connection is all about that sort of concept. I think we might stop there and come back to behaviors on our next mission. Before we finish up, questions, comments, anything anyone would like to add or say about today's session?
Hey, Bradley, I just wanted to talk about influence and how Fletchers influence people. And I actually had an experience today with our friend Ian that's online here. He actually sent a referral through to Adrian, and they didn't want to go as far as Berwick, and it came through to us. And when I spoke with the referral that came through, they spoke so highly of Ian that we were the first point of call. Ian sold them a house and we were their first point of call to come to. So with, looking at action and things like that, I've managed to secure a face-to-face, my first Zoom time appraisal. So that'll be interesting. And on flow of that is I've also now brought my PM in at that time for her to actually learn. So from just that one small action of influence that he's had over that customer, that's flowing through. And hopefully we get to write the business. So kudos to you, mate.
Excellent. Very good. I thought you were going to say you wanted to talk about the Dodgers. No, I'm just kidding. Who else? I'm gonna when I finish this session, after I give my wife a hug and a kiss because she was out when the Dodgers won, I'm going right back to my TV to see the trophy being presented. But who else? What else? Any other comments about it? We enjoying Maxwell? Yeah, it's got good stuff. As I said, it's more between his stuff and what I've added, I think it's more practical. It's sort of the nuts and bolts of relationships and getting on with people. All right.
Bradley, I think just finally, you mentioned before about experience, and I think a lot of this course has highlighted some of the negative experiences that perhaps I've had in the past at other organisations. And I guess the stark contrast with Fletchers, and it's really interesting and somewhat justifies the reason for moving.
And if you only had done it years before when we first tried to get you, imagine.
That's right.
Imagine all the years of anguish we could have saved you. Now, your life in between was like, well, that's exactly right. You often have to see sort of the good to understand the bad. The bad helps influencing you to want to go towards the good. I mean, all those things. And the more experiences you have, then the more you can understand it, Often, unless you work with really nice people and good people, you don't appreciate it. You know, Ben's probably, I don't know about all the other people you ever worked for, but Ben's probably the most, and Rob, the two of those guys between them are so knowledgeable and so influential with the way they deal with people. And they make a great combo. And that's why it's such a great office. And that's why we like two directors in an office, because they complement each other, because they're both very different. And I imagine you're getting more of that nurturing. I mean, COVID's made it hard, but still, you guys have had so many Zoom meetings, and you know, you probably had more of that in the time you've been with us than you experienced in, I don't know how many years where you've been elsewhere, where it's just been you. Anyone else? Got any other comments before we finish up? All right, everybody, have a great night. And so next, we won't have a session on Monday, the day it's Cup. Yeah, Monday's the day before Cup. So we won't have a session on Monday, but we'll have one again on the Wednesday. So I'll send a diary note out this week for Wednesday at the day after Cup. All right, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Bradley.
Bradley.
Thank you.
Enjoy the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Inspiration tonight. Enjoy.